Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, powered by Match Shark. Listener ready? Stand by.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear, a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA matches around the world. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey. IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association, was formed out of the concealed carry movement back in the 1990s. It's based on the founders' desire for a sport based on real-world defensive skills and not just fancy equipment. IDPA matches are a series of stages that are based on realistic defensive scenarios, and they'll test the shooter's skills in gun handling, accuracy, speed, and problem solving. Men and women from around the world compete every week in IDPA matches, and here at Unload and Show Clear, we introduce you to those people. We talk one-on-one, people, not politics. These are not professional athletes. They're everyday men and women, your neighbors, your coworkers, public servants, your kids' teachers, and you're going to meet one of those great people today. And for 2020, Unload and Show Clear is powered by Match Shark. If you watch videos from last year's IDPA World Championship 2019, you will see that shooters had to deal with the discomfort of shooting in sometimes heavy rain. If you were at that match, or if you were with me at the 2019 Arkansas State match, you know how much fun it can be to shoot in the rain, especially heavy rain. Why do I say that? Well, pasting and scoring targets is not fun at all. Not only are you and your equipment soaked, not only are you cold and wet and damp and uncomfortable, but pasting and scoring targets makes your day even that much more fun. You can't see the scoring zones. The pasters and the tape won't stick to the targets. The targets ultimately will disintegrate because they get waterlogged and have to be changed more frequently. Well, contrast that Arkansas State match to the World Championship and compare the targets. There was a big difference. The difference was you had baggies on the Arkansas targets and you had Match Shark covering the World Championship targets. Match Shark's patent-pending target shields keep targets dry even in heavy rain. They're reusable too, so the cost of those shields is quickly recovered by simply patching and reusing them over and over and over again, because you're not shooting the shield, you're shooting the backer that holds the shield to the target stand. Well, once you're done, you just take the things off, slap a little paster on it. There's a tape paster that covers up the holes. Boom, you're set to reuse it over and over and over again. And it makes your staff happier because setup and scoring and tear down are so much easier. It makes your shooters happier because they can see the targets and they don't have to deal with plastic bags. They're designed and manufactured right here in the United States. They are owned and operated by two IDPA shooters themselves, people experienced in match direction and setup. Will and Chris Schmid, whom you've heard on this podcast, they understand the challenges that match staff face when dealing with wet weather. So let them help you run your matches faster and smarter and make it a better experience for your safety officers and your shooters. Visit matchshark.com today and get everything you need to be prepared for your next rainy day match. That's matchshark.com. Visit them today, matchshark.com. Our special guest today is Lynn Webb from Oxford, Mississippi. Lynn, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
Tell us a little about yourself for those who have not had a chance to meet you. Tell us what you do for a living there in Oxford.
I'm a retired law enforcement, 25 years from our sheriff's department. I own Eagle Eye Personal Defense training. I teach Mississippi Enhanced Concealed Carry and different disciplines of firearms training.
Awesome. 25 years on the force.
Yes, sir.
What made you decide that law enforcement was the career for you?
Well, first off, I really wanted to be a paramedic, and then I passed out on a call one night, so
Oh, no.
scratched that off. And when I was in high school, and then my uncle, who was a Bartlett, Tennessee firefighter for many years, got injured in the line of duty and almost lost his life back in way before I was ever born. At the time I was trying to get into law enforcement, there wasn't any female firefighters. So I thought, well, I'll try law enforcement. And so our sheriff here in our town at the time was gracious enough to let me do an internship and get on reserve. And then it just kind of went from there.
Growing up, what was it that interested you in being a first responder?
The biggest thing was just hearing my uncle always talk about how cool it was to be a fireman and the things that he got to do and stuff. And so I figured it was easier for me to get into law enforcement than to become a firefighter.
Right.
And so I started working in the jail, and then I just worked my way up to the University Police Department, and then worked my way back to the Sheriff's Department again as a deputy.
Growing up, were you introduced to firearms early on? Was that or was that something that came along with the internship and the training for law enforcement, or had you been introduced to guns as a kid?
Oh, I'd been shooting guns ever since I was old enough to have a Red Ryder BB gun. My dad and I, we hunted and just big outdoors, fish, stuff like that. So mostly I had shotguns and rifles, as a kid, and didn't really know a whole lot about pistols until I got in law enforcement. And then after I got into law enforcement, I shot a few law enforcement matches with other law enforcement officers. And I thought, well, this is pretty cool. And so then one of the guys that I was working with at the time was shooting IDPA at the time. And he was like, hey, come over to Ridge Crossing at Nick and Dee Dee's, and watched him shoot a match. And the whole time I was watching him shoot the match, I was like, why didn't I bring a gun? Should be shooting this. And so then it just kind of went from there, and I've been shooting it ever since. So
you were introduced to Nikki and Dee Dee Carter, whom we've had on the show before, great people. Tell me about your first, when you did actually remember to bring the gun. What was the first match that you went to? What was that like? Tell us about that experience. The next month after I had went and watched that previous one, I shot it. Everybody was super friendly and eager to give tips and do's and don'ts. And I got a lot of don'ts because I was doing stuff that I had learned in law enforcement, which was not necessarily what you were supposed to be doing in IDPA. So I got a couple of procedures, I'm sure. And then I don't really remember which one was my first official sanction match. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do. My first sanction match was at Memphis, and I got disqualified in the next to the last stage. Oh, no. What happened?
Yeah. I shot a round. I shot my pistol, and a round hit one of the metal barricade post, and the SO said that it scared him, and so he DQ'd me.
Right. Yep. How long after that first local match was it before you got up the nerve or decided, I want to try to go to Memphis to shoot this sanctioned match? Because you joined back in 2012, right? Okay. So how long after that?
I want to say it was probably within that year or the first of the next year. Roxanne Hill and her husband was the match directors up there at the time. And so I had went up there to shoot with them, and the day was going pretty good. I was moving right along, and just had a mishap, and ended up, when it was all over with, if I hadn't have got DQ'd, I'd have finished first place in the division, and because I was far enough ahead. But that's lessons learned. So probably won't be the last time I get DQ'd either.
Well, they what is it they say? It's not a matter of if, but when, right?
Exactly. So as long as I get DQ'd from something that I know I did, it's not near as bad as
Right.
getting DQ'd for something that you don't know what you did.
Yep. Yep. And as long as you survived it and nobody else got hurt. Yep.
That's correct.
So the introduction there, that first the local match, what did you do in between there and Memphis to that got you ready and convinced you that going on and shooting this big sanctioned match was something you were ready for?
I just did a lot of dry firing, learning to draw faster, learning to move the concealment. The jacket was a big thing. I never really had shot with a jacket, so I was having to draw with that and be safe with the vest, and just dry firing, learning the pistol, learning to move. Back then, you had different rules, a little bit different rules than you do now, and
a lot different rules.
Yes, so I had to try to get all that down, but mostly just listening to the older shooters and the more experienced shooters, giving tips, and I'd try it, and if it worked for me, then I went with it. If it didn't, then I tried to do something that a little different, maybe that got me to where I could use certain techniques and stuff to get around, and I did shoot a lot more. I'm lucky enough that where I live here in Oxford, I live out in the county, and so I have my own range, and so I just blew up bullets, man. I shot bullets all day. My husband was so sick of buying and reloading bullets. So, but I mean, I did, and it paid off. I did good, and even though I got DQ'd, I was right back at it the next month. We shot, Nikki Didi and them's my home range, and so I was back over there, and then I kind of got introduced to shooting at Como with Chris and Will, and so I divide my time between the two when I can.
That's Chris and Will Schmid at DeSoto Rifle and Pistol Club in Como, Mississippi. Also happen to be sponsors of the podcast. Great people. So when was the first time that you decided to travel for one of these matches outside of Mississippi, beyond Ridge Crossing or Como?
Pretty quickly after getting in it. I think one of my next matches might have been at Mike Plato and them's up in Arkansas at Casa. I've shot several matches up there, and then my first big major, what I consider major match, was in 2015. I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the World Championship up there in 2015, and did well. I didn't get DQ'd there.
What was it like to step onto the world stage?
It was. I thought it was pretty awesome. Getting to see all the different people coming from other countries and all around the United States just coming, and they were just, for the most part, friendly. And I remember shooting one of the stages, and I had made a mistake. I was, throwing my bullets in my bag and stuff, and Gordon Carroll walked by, and he said, let that stage go. Once you shoot it, it's over. You can't do nothing about it. Move on to the next one. And I thought, well, I guess he's got a point, but still didn't help my feelings though. but I moved on, and I've, over the years, I've kind of learned, it's over with once it leaves the end of the barrel. So
there's no getting it back.
No getting it back. And so I went there, and then I went to the Nationals in Texas. A couple of years after that, 17 maybe.
16, 17.
16, 17, yeah.
Yep.
It was hot. Oh my God, it was hot.
Yeah.
It was so hot. I thought I was going to die. But it was fun. It was a long, very long day. But, my husband says I'll talk to anybody. And so for me, meeting new people is just who I am. I'd go up and talk to anybody, and
there's a lot of anybody's at those matches.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge.
And they're huge. And even at the local matches, you can really learn a lot from just going and shooting a monthly match.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you go outside your range. And fortunate enough, right here, we've got Memphis and Como and Columbus, and we've got within a 2-hour drive, I've got a bunch of ranges you can go to, and at almost every one of them ranges, there's somebody there that can give you valuable information that you can take back and try at your, at your range or wherever it is you practice at, and see if it works for you.
There's a lot of great shooters, a lot of great people in that area. Any one person stand out, had the biggest influence on your transition from, like you were talking about earlier, the law enforcement, trying to get your mind out of some of those habits that come from law enforcement that don't really work in IDPA. Who would you say had the biggest influence on turning you into a competitive shooter, a better competitive shooter over the years from that area?
Well, like I say, there's so many good ones here, but I'd have to say probably Nikki and Keith Bishop. Keith Bishop goes way back to the beginning of IDPA almost, and he's laid back, and he really helps new shooters getting in, trying to make sure they understand the rules and going slow with you, and just kind of making you feel comfortable. And we've been, I've been lucky, I guess. A lot of our matches that I go to, him and Keith and Nikki and David Jackson and all those guys, Ray, and they're there. And if you need help, you just, hey man, I can't figure out the stage, or why did I blow this stage, or whatever. and they're there to help, and there for a while when I was first doing it, every time I'd finish a stage, I'd write my time down, and I was really concentrating on my time. And it's like, if you'll throw that notebook away and quit writing them times down, shoot better. And so I quit, and so now I don't tally it up until the end of the match. And so I really don't let the stages, bother me that bad. But unless you get one of those stages that Chris Wiley does, where you have to shoot 50 yards at a standard with one hand or something, and then I'm like 39 points down on one stage or something. But it's all fun.
We're calling you out, Chris.
I call him out every time. I'll call Chris out every time. But it's all in fun and game. Everybody laughs, and at the end of the day, and go eat with each other. I mean, it's like law enforcement, really, to me. In law enforcement, you've got those friends that you hang out with, and they're your brothers and your sisters. And just like in IDPA, everybody's there to help.
Yep. What's aside from that lesson that Gordon Carroll imparted to you that day about forgetting about a bad stage and moving on, apart from that, is there what's the biggest lesson that you've learned over the years that has helped improve your shooting?
Is practice. Anytime you get a chance to practice, even if it's just dry firing, is do some dry fire, do something. You can't let the gun sit down for 2 or 3 months and then pick it up and expect to do good. You're going to be slow. You're not going to be able to do what you were doing 3 months ago if you haven't been practicing.
Right.
And that's what all of us are going to pretty much probably have to do since this pandemic thing's been going on. You just it just goes by the wayside sometimes because you got more important stuff going on.
Yep. The people who made good use of this downtime to do some dry firing are going to stand out.
Oh yeah, they're going to be smoking stages, man. It's going to, but it's going to. I think it'll be good though when everybody gets back to shooting and stuff, and everybody can be around each other and not be afraid of getting sick and stuff. So, but
what's your favorite division?
CCP. I enjoyed shooting.
That's a tough one to grow in. There's not a whole lot of people in that division yet.
Yeah, I was shooting. I shot the last CCP, and I barely missed. Like almost every match, I just barely missed Sharpshooter, and so I kept hanging in there, and I went to the sheepdog match in December. And man, I don't know. I just had an awesome match, and I got bumped to. I finished 8th in the division, and I got bumped to sharpshooter.
Nice. Everybody told me that I absolutely had to get you on the show because you have great stories. So, so share a fun story from a match. That something fun that happened on the trip or at the match or whatever. Share a fun memory with us from these 8 years of traveling around shooting this sport.
One of the fun ones that I can remember, it really didn't have anything the actual match, but when I went to the Creason, Texas, to the Nationals out there. We were riding around. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but you got to go way out in these fields and 2 miles down to the range. And everywhere I was going, I saw cactuses. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to get one of the guys that works here on this ranch, get me a cactus. And he's like, you can't be stealing these people's cactus. I said, I'm not going to steal a cactus. I'm going to ask for it. And so before the match was over with, I got one of the guys to ride me around on the golf cart. And we went up and I picked a little real small cactus and put it in a box and brought it home, and I planted it in my yard. And now it was just one petal cactus, and now it's up about 3 foot tall, 8 or 10 more cactus shoots off of it, and it blooms. And every time I go by it, I call it my little Texas cactus. So, but
the national championship cactus.
That's it, yeah. But I always try to have fun. Most people, when I go to a match, they don't even know me as Lynn because my jacket, my shirt, and everything has my nickname on it, which is Cornbread. And so pretty much everybody calls me Cornbread at a match. But, so I just like being, have a good time. I that's what it's about. And so I just try to have a good time. You could tell a story just about it from every match, but since I have been in it, I've been to a bunch of places now. The couple of years ago, we shot down at Boondocks in Raymond, Mississippi, south of here, and oh my gosh, it rained all day long, and it was cold. You couldn't get warm. The hand warmers would not even get warm. And it was Sam Williams and I was working a stage together, and man, it was so cold. I got home like 2 days later after the match, and my clothes were still wet in the bag. How bad it rained. It was horrible. But it was a good match. I won a gun. I won a rifle.
Oh, nice.
At that match, and so
nice.
It was a good day, but it just rained so
you
much.
Earned that rifle.
I earned that PCC rifle, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was one that I had to, because of family issues, I had to cancel and wasn't able to make it. And then I saw the videos from afterwards, and I thought, I'm not so sure I'm disappointed that I didn't make it to that match.
Yeah, it was a good match, but man, it would have been different if it had just been cold or if it had just been wet. But to have been wet and cold,
right?
It was horrible. But those guys, man, Kim and Mark Condon, they had their crew there, and they were bringing us hot chocolate and coffee and stuff, trying to keep us warm and everything. But it all turned out good.
Well, what's next? What's the next goal for you, IDPA wise? What are you shooting for?
Well, right now, at the beginning of the year, I started shooting carry optics, and I've only got to shoot like maybe 2 months at over at Nikki and them's with it, and so I really hadn't really tested it in a sanctioned match, but.
Right.
I was supposed to have I was signed up to go to Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, and Chattanooga at Salt of Daisy, but those have been postponed and stuff, and so I'm still gonna make the one in Chattanooga if it's still on in August, and the Savannah one I'm not gonna be able to make because it's the same day that the Southern Belle's gonna be over at the Ridge,
right?
And I've already committed to shooting that match, so. we'll see how the carry optic does for me for a little bit. I've shot the carry optics on my rifle, so it was, it was pretty cool. And I've been shooting some other matches outside of IDPA with my rifle, and so I thought, well, it works on the rifle, it's got to work on the pistol too. So I've bought me a pistol and got it on it, and going to try to see how I can doing that and see if I can get a bump to sharpshooter.
There you go.
And carry optics.
You talked about your 25 years in law enforcement, and you mentioned early at the beginning being an instructor. How much of what you've learned and experienced in IDPA carries over into what you do as an instructor at Eagle Eye Personal Defense?
Well, being able to teach the people that come take my classes about the importance of grip and their stance and how to handle the recoil of a pistol, and the importance of all of those having to work together, because if one of them's off, then your shot's off and you can't be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has helped. And then, I teach different things outside of enhanced concealed carry. I teach a lot of ladies in my classes.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm the only, I am Eagle Eye Personal Defense, I'm the only instructor, employee, trash taker, outer, everything. I get a lot of people that call and want just a one-on-one class because they don't feel comfortable shooting a pistol around men. Then they're not comfortable sitting in a classroom with men. So I have a lot of women that come and say, "Hey, me and my friend want to take a class. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I have men and women that are couples that come and shoot together. I've got a class coming up this week, or excuse me, next week on Monday. A man and woman's coming to take the class. He knows a little bit about shooting, and she knows absolutely nothing about shooting. And so they want to work together to learn. And so that's what I like about having the opportunity to be able to teach very small classes.
Mm-hmm.
They get a lot of more one-on-one time.
Right.
And then I can interject my law enforcement into it as well too, things that I've learned and seen over the years, as far as the law side of it goes.
Right. Now, you didn't think I was going to let you off the hook here without asking you about the Cornbread nickname, right? So
yeah, go ahead.
How did this? Where did this come from, and how is it that it has come to be sort of your other name that everyone knows you as?
I was at a training class at the police academy many years ago, probably at least 15, 16 years ago. I was still at the university, and I went down, and naturally, being in law enforcement, I was the only female in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to do all the moves, and I got all the moves tried on me,
Okay.
That we were trying to learn. We were learning self-defense moves and pressure points and control tactics and stuff. And so they fed us every day at the academy, and I just ate cornbread every day. And one of the gentlemen that was in our class was a U.S. Marshal from the Jackson area, and he just started calling me Cornbread because that's all I ate. I didn't eat biscuits, toast, or anything. I just ate cornbread, even for breakfast if they had it. And he just started calling me Cornbread, and it just kind of stuck. And then some of the instructors started calling me that, and then it just kind of went from there. And then I ended up several years after that. My tag on my vehicle is personalized, and it says Cornbread, and I have a cornbread tattoo, so it's kind of where it goes. I have a black iron skillet with cornbread in it, with a piece of cornbread missing from it.
There you go.
So
For those of you who are not Southern, this is a Southern thing.
It's a Southern
It's
thing.
only we understand.
Yeah, it's like
Come down and try
and butter. Yeah, it's like sugar and butter on grits and sweet tea. You know,
Right.
you gotta have sugar and butter on grits and sweet tea. But
Exactly right.
yeah,
So I have a feeling I know the answer to this question
Okay.
based on some of your previous answers. But what is it about IDPA that makes you love it so much? I mean, you mentioned some other sports, and you've talked about encouraging people to shoot anything out there to get trigger time to improve your skills. But what is it about IDPA that you love so much? What is it special about this sport?
well, one of the reasons why I got into it was, like I said earlier, one of the guys that I was working with was shooting IDPA, and I thought, well, I'll go try it, and I did, and I liked it, and I thought, well, hey, I can use this to a degree for training in my law enforcement. And so I knew that there was a fine line between, the two, between the law enforcement tactics and the IDPA tactics, but it allowed me to improve on my house clearing and building clearing tactics of how to slice a pod, how to use ports, and how to open a door, not flash your hand and things like that. And so I just kind of used it as a means of training for me in my law enforcement side, but also learn the sport as well for when I retired, because I retired in 2017, and so like the last year and a half or so that I was still working and shooting IDPA, I started learning more of the IDPA stuff. I kind of was getting away from the part of using it as my training for law enforcement part to actually getting into the fun part of the shooting aspect, if
Right.
that makes sense. Because I knew I was getting out of law enforcement, and I had always had a fine line of knowing the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, as far as like dropping the magazines and some of the little things that we have to do in law enforcement that we wouldn't necessarily do in IDPA, and vice versa.
Right.
So, and fortunately, where I was working at, being a school resource officer through my department, we got to train a little more than just the average law enforcement officer may get in another department, because we were at the school. We could make our own training up. We could search buildings every day if we wanted to, by the mere fact of just walking down the hall and saying, well, what would you do if somebody came out this room? Or what would you do if this happened? And so I kind of was always on my toes of thinking about what ifs,
Right.
being in a school setting. And the building that I was in, I had third graders through fifth graders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always had to make sure that what I was doing was going to protect them if something bad happened. And so I just tried to use both of them as a learning tool until I retired.
All right. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for coming out and being on the show. I really appreciate it. I mean it. A bunch of people had said, you got to get Lynn on the show. She would be a fun guest. And I'm really glad that you took the time to do it. And I look forward to hopefully things clear up and we get a chance to see each other on the range down the road.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you to our guest for coming on the show. And thank you to our awesome sponsor, Match Shark, for making this entire season possible. If you would, please take a minute to check out our website, Unload Podcast. Lots of cool previous episodes are there, links to all sorts of great information. Just check out the guest list as well. Join the Facebook group too if you want to connect with other fans and get updates on the latest news. You can find that at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of cool videos there at unloadpodcast.com/YouTube. And if you'd like to support the show personally, consider becoming a patron, just $1 a month at patreon.com/unload. And for your support, I'll send you out a sticker and you'll have my undying gratitude for your help. If you or someone you know would make an interesting guest for a future episode, you can contact me at unloadpodcast.com. Just go to the contact button in the menu at the top of the page and send me a message. Or you can send me an email at Lloyd, LLOYD, at unloadpodcast.com. Tune in again next Thursday for another episode of Unload and Show Clear, powered by Match Shark. We are a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Be sure to check out all of the other pro-freedom podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.